Well, good afternoon everybody. I'm Professor Maggie Kinloch. I'm currently the Chair of Humanist Society Scotland. So it's my honour and privilege to welcome all of you to this, our first ever digital online conference. Now, something to tell you is that comments are live throughout this little conference, so feel free to type your thoughts and questions and messages in, and they'll be picked up and moderated and handled and contribute to some of the discussions. So please feel free to do that. We live in very difficult times, don't we? I mean, it's a real challenge just day to day at the moment, and for sure we knew we weren't going to be able to have our live conference this year, but we know how much all of us, and indeed all of our members and all of our supporters, look forward to that event every year. So we were absolutely not going to cancel. So we got our minds working on this, and we came up with the idea to have a digital online conference, and our Chief Executive Fraser and his team have assembled a terrific programme of animation and poetry, discussion with our celebrants, speakers to stimulate our thinking, to stimulate our passion. And they're going to be focusing particularly on the notion of how we care for our environment, particularly we as humanists. What is our role in caring for the environment and indeed for one another at this time? So I hope you're going to enjoy that. It's a mini lunch break conference. I've had my lunch, but I've got my after lunch cup of tea. So I suggest that you get yours as well and settle down in your armchair and enjoy with me the Humanist Society Scotland annual conference online for the first time. Enjoy.
Protecting the environment and challenging waste is really important to Humanists in Scotland. Indeed, in 2019, at the General Assembly of Humanists International, it was really important that climate change was one of our key focuses in the 21st century. Today we're joined by Mary Michelle and Marianne Brown from the research organisation Ostrero, who are going to talk about circular economy principles. And they're also going to talk us through a practical demonstration of how you can do this at home.
Hello, I'm Mary Michelle from Ostrero, an organisation we founded in 2016 to grow the circular economy in Scotland. Today we're going to tell you a bit about what the circular economy is, why it matters, and how it might help us build back better after COVID-19.
Hi, I'm Marianne Brown from Ostrero. We'll also show you how a circular economy can help us to design things differently. And we'll then take you through a circular economy design project. So grab a pen and pencil and join in.
The circular economy is about designing out waste and keeping materials at their highest value for as long as possible. It's not about recycling. That's thinking about the end of life of a product. Rather, it's about thinking about the whole life cycle from the minute you start designing. It's the opposite from the kind of economic system we currently exist in, which is known as a linear economy. So there we think and make in straight lines. We take things out of the ground, we make something with them, we use them, maybe only once, and then we chuck them away without really worrying too much about where they end up. In contrast, in a circular economy, we're thinking in loops and circles. Like in nature, everything is designed to feed into something else, and there's very little waste. And in a circular economy, everything is powered by renewable energy. So why do we need a circular economy? Well, it's estimated that in Scotland, we're using the resources of not one, but 3 planets every year, which is clearly not sustainable. In addition, the world's resources are becoming increasingly rare and hard to extract. One example that came out of recent global stock checks was indium. That's the material that makes the screen of your smartphone touch responsive. If we continue to use indium at the same rates as we are now, there's only enough left for another 12 years. Silver has 17 years and oil 37. In addition, there are more and more people. We're expecting 3 billion more people on the world in the next 30 years. So we've got more people and fewer resources. We need to think about how we can share those resources more fairly now and for the future. We're also having a huge impact on plants and wildlife and the climate. Friends of the Earth estimate there's been a 60% decline in species populations since the 1960s. One small local example of this is that of Lulu, the killer whale. She was washed up on the beaches of Tiree a few years ago, And the beaches and the water there are beautiful and clean and clear. But when scientists did tests on her body, they found that she was one of the most polluted animals to be found anywhere in the world. She had more than 20 times the safe levels of plastic in her system and had never been able to have a calf because of this. So scientists think that her pod and many others like it will go extinct because of the way that we treat our waste. So we've got fewer resources, more people, and we're harming our environment and wildlife. But in the face of all this, we just keep buying more stuff. Think about how many people buy a new phone as soon as the next version comes out, and how many of the old phones just end up in landfill. In fact, in Scotland, in the last 4 years, £50 million worth of gold has gone to landfill, hidden in our e-waste. So that's in our phones, mobiles, laptops, all kinds of electronic equipment, all gone to waste. And there's waste like this in so much of what we do, we just don't necessarily think about it or see it. So for example, a car sits unused 92% of the time. We throw away 33% of our food production, and the average power tool is only used for 13 minutes in its whole life. So if you think about all the amazing resources that have gone into designing and making these products, only for them to sit pretty much unused for most of their working life, it just seems like such a waste. The good news is that the circular economy can help us design things differently and cut out a lot of that waste.
The pandemic has shown us how connected the world is and how outdated our current linear, wasteful and unstable economic system is. It's also shown us that we're more capable of change than perhaps we ever thought we were. Because of the pandemic, we've been forced to think about how we will build back our systems. We now have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape our economy. And the exciting question is, if we have to build back our systems, can we do it in a way that is better for people and for the planet? During lockdown, we at Ostrero did some work with school children across Scotland, and we asked them about some of the positive things that had come out of lockdown and whether those things could help us to build back better. Some of the things that they came up with were that there were stronger communities, there was less pollution, we'd been making things last, making the most of technology, and vitally, that there was a mindset for change, understanding that impactful change is possible while still being able to have a meaningful and really good life. Matilda, who's aged 9, said, "The lockdown is proof that we can change how we live to help our planet. We can live without shopping for joy, and we can travel less or in a pollution-free way, and we can still be happy." There is work to be done. Currently, only 8.6% of global resources are used in a circular way. Moving forward, we have to make sure that we use the huge amounts of money that we'll spend on our recovery to support the green, inclusive societies that we need for tomorrow. The circular economy offers us a realistic framework in which to address the urgent environmental issues that we face. It provides us with workable solutions to cutting out waste and using our resources more cleverly. It's about business and opportunity. It provides us with a framework for a positive future that is entirely possible and achievable.
So the good news is that the circular economy gives us this really good framework for better design, for designing out waste. We're now going to take you through a circular design using 5 key circular design principles. We're going to design a necklace, but you could apply these principles to anything, to any product or system that you're designing. Let's take the principles one by one.
So Mary and I started thinking about the fashion industry in jewellery and how when something breaks or goes out of fashion, it can often end up in landfill. So how could the principles of a circular economy help us take a different approach? In this task, we're going to do some circular economy design. The first principle of the circular economy is that we're trying to transform waste into value. First, we think about the material. And in this case, what I'm going to use is a phone and a laptop. And what we're going to do is take the gold that's kept inside these electronic devices, and we're going to use that to make ourselves a gold necklace out of this waste material. Now this is very exciting because at the moment in Edinburgh and at Dundee universities, they're working on a collaborative project, and that is to discover whether or not they can remove the gold that you find in electronics and recover it for different purposes. And at the moment, as Mary said, there's £50 million worth of gold that's come into Scotland over the last 4 years and is hidden away, hidden treasure inside these electronic devices. So we're going to use that to make this gold necklace out of recovered gold. Now, the circular economy is powered by renewable energy. It's important to use clean renewable energy in circular design. Now, what we're going to do here for the purposes of our removal of the gold from the electronic items is use some solar energy and some renewable wind energy. So I'm drawing here a wind turbine, and that's feeding into this process where we're removing gold. In circular economy, items are designed for disassembly. Now, how many times has a member of your family found that when their phone breaks or the television breaks, that there's really nothing you can do about it? You don't even know how to open it. So even if you wanted to fix it, you don't, and it ends up in landfill. You get a new one. My necklace here, though, is going to be designed for disassembly. Well, if you design things for disassembly, this stops being a problem. This means that you design things so that they can easily be taken apart again, so that it can be fixed and updated and then properly recycled at the end of its life. So here I've got the necklace and the clip and the pendant all being separate items so that they can be taken apart at the end of their life and used again. Circular design is also inspired by nature. In nature, a bird might take a berry that's fallen from a tree, eat it and then drop it about a mile away. In doing so, the bird has fed itself, but it's also caused the regeneration of the tree. In our idea of a necklace, we are going to be the seed carriers, so the pendant in this necklace is made from seed paper. And at the end of its life, or whenever you want to, the seed paper can be taken and planted. I'm going to imagine that the seeds that are in this necklace are going to grow a lovely flower, and perhaps that's going to be nice for the bees. Finally, a circular economy is multifunctional. So here we're thinking about how materials can be used to their maximum value. Each material doing more than one thing, so you're getting the most out of your resources. In my necklace, the multifunction comes from the fact that you can change the pendant according to fashion, and you can change the seeds in the pendant according to the different seasons, but also it also acts as something that's capable of growing something later on. So here are the principles of circular design. We've got waste to value, it's powered by renewable energy, it's designed for disassembly, it's inspired by nature, and it's multifunctional. Applying these principles, you can get thinking about designing all kinds of things, from pens to shoes to clothes to glasses to cars to everything. Everything else could be changed in a circular economy. It's just time for you to get stuck in.
So now you know a bit more about the circular economy and how it can help us design out waste. If you manage to come up with your own circular design, please share it with us via email or Twitter. We'd love to see what you've come up with. This is a really strange time with new rules and new boundaries for everyone. But let's take this opportunity to build back a better society, a better economy, and a better environment, now and for future generations. Thank you so much for listening.
Hello, my name is Victoria Orlica and I'm the MSIP for Modern Wisho and the trustee of the Scottish Youth Parliament for Communications. Thank you for inviting us to be here today to talk to you about the Scottish Youth Parliament and our national campaign on environmental protection, Pack It Up, Pack It In. SIP was established on the 30th of June 1999, making us one day older than the Scottish Parliament, a fact we'd like to remind them regularly. Elections are held every 2 years, in which all young people from across Scotland stand to become the members of the Scottish Youth Parliament, MSIPs. The Scottish Youth Parliament is a wide group of young people all across Scotland, which are democratically elected voices of young people. SIP is made out of 160 or so MSIPs, which include every Scottish constituency and 11 national voluntary organisations, each of them having at least 2 MSIPs elected. We have a unique democratic mandate to represent the views of young people aged 12 to 25 across Scotland from a variety of backgrounds and communities. Alongside that, SIP has an elected board, including chair, vice chair, and 5 trustees. However, including them, we also have 10 conveners and deputy conveners, and groups like Creative Communications Team. We are a fundamentally rights-based charity, and our mission, vision, and values are grounded in the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child, UNCRC. In particular, our purpose embodies Article 12, that young people have the right to express their views freely and have their opinions listened to in all matters affecting them. SIP exists to provide a national platform for young people to discuss the issues that are important to them and campaign to effect the changes that they wish to see. We deliver our national campaign every year, and previous campaign successes have included Vote at 16, Love Equality, which are a campaign for equal marriage, All Aboard, which was all about public transport, and Right Here, Right Now, which is successfully called on the Scottish Government to incorporate the UNCRC into Scots law. Of course, as well as this, our outgoing campaign on environmental protection, Pack It Up, Pack It In. Each constituency has at least 2 MSIPs elected, which means all of you here have MSIPs elected in your area to represent your area in Scotland. From Shetland to Dundee, Ayrshire, even Lanarkshire, there's always going to be an MSIP who wants to have their voice listened, as well as their young people's voice heard. SIP also has space for up to 20 national volunteer organisation members. We currently only have 11, but we would love the opportunity to explore with Humanist Society Scotland how we can support to ensure young humanists' voices are heard within our structures. The new SIP board is really keen to expand our membership, and we are looking at flexible and innovative ways to do this. So if you would like to work with us on this, please get in touch. It's so important that young people are part of the discussions on changes the decision makers make every single day, from housing, transport to climate change. We are the generation who are growing up in this society, and we aim for it to be the best one to grow up in.
Hi everyone, my name is Liam Fowley. I am currently the member of the Scottish Youth Parliament for Kilmarnock and Irvine Valley. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Scottish Youth Parliament. So you've heard about SYP from Victoria. Now I'm going to move on to a massive issue that I'm sure you all know young people are endlessly passionate about: the climate crisis. We know young people are passionate about our climate crisis because we see them flock in their thousands to Scotland's streets to demand action, and we see them talk complete and utter sense about the emergency we are facing. We're realising that it is us that's going to take the hit for not taking action now. All we want is to grow up in a clean, green and vibrant country, and we want to keep it that way, for us and the next generations. We also know young people are passionate about this because after MSYP's consulted with over 10,000 young people, it was chosen that environmental protection would be the focus for the 2019-20 national campaign. I was honoured to lead that campaign since June last year until its conclusion only last month. So what did we decide to focus on? Well, we all know how big of an umbrella term climate change is. We decided to focus on the reduction of pollution, as these are words our young people are familiar with. Our campaign aim was to empower young people to speak out and take action to reduce pollution levels in Scotland. What's the key word there? Empower. If we empower our young people and they know that we can make this country and our world cleaner, greener and better to be in, that is when change will occur. So we split our campaign into 3 separate phases, if you like. Our first phase was the research phase, getting the views of as many young people in Scotland as we physically could, aiming to achieve a diverse range of responses. And we did. We managed to reach thousands of young people from Shetland to Stranraer. Through mobilising our amazing team of MSYPs, experts and consultation, we consulted over 2,000 young people, a massive indication of the priority young people see this issue to be. I stood in engagement sessions and heard them speak so impassionately about this subject. After our research phase, we had our advocacy phase. This was about lobbying, screaming and shouting about what our young people want for their country to do to reduce the pollution. Some would say the fun bit, others may disagree. I and so many others spoke to decision makers from local councils, MSPs, MPs, and I took this to the Scottish Cabinet. After that, we had our grassroots phase, or in other terms, our local actions phase, a way for MSYPs and young people, not discounting those that were young at heart, of course, to get involved with the campaign. Every month from October 2019 to October 2020, we ran a campaign action day. A day where young people can get empowered, get in, know that the butterfly effect is there, know that the little change they make one day will have a massive effect elsewhere. These range from getting young folk to climb a hill, writing poetry on Burns Day, participating in an online Q&A with experts, and even some craftivism thrown in there. Our campaign was, of course, hit by the COVID-19 pandemic like everything was. We had to adapt, we had to move online, but we had to keep the momentum going. We kept with our monthly action days, we kept updates, we kept discussing it. Whilst we continued to advocate our cause using online approaches, we are now also going to be backing calls for a green recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. So watch this space to see what that campaign entails.
Of course, as Liam explained, our campaign Pack It Up, Pack It In has been affected by the pandemic. However, that has given us a vehicle to advocate for our green recovery. Although Pack It Up, Pack It In officially ended at our October sitting, we will continue for calling for the changes young people have told us they would like to see in relation of Scotland's pollution levels for our green recovery. This year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to make some changes to SIP's next national campaign, and we would like to be focusing on campaign exclusively on responding to the pandemic and its aftermath. The pandemic has had a huge impact on how things are run. Environment has been no exception. It's fair to say that the start of lockdown, things have improved when it comes to littering, as people weren't leaving their houses. Unfortunately, that didn't last long, and of course, the impact became greater, with people littering with their masks and throwing around their fast food bags out of their car windows. At the start of lockdown, the Scottish Youth Parliament partnered up with Young Scot and YouthLink to create the Lockdown Lowdown survey, which was aimed at young people from across Scotland to hear their concerns about COVID-19. The survey results give a clear picture of what young people are currently worried about. The survey received 2,421 completed responses from young people across Scotland. Respondents were given a list of issues that may be worrying them during this time and were asked to rate their levels of concern. Although I don't have to talk about the findings in detail, the key issues young people are worried about are the implications of their education, their own and other people's mental and physical health, their employment and financial circumstances, relationships with their families and friends, and their future. The pandemic has impacted on every aspect of young people's lives. Of course, some time has gone by since the first time we did the survey, and things have changed. Therefore, we are currently running a second Lockdown Lowdown survey to see how young people feel at the moment, with the pandemic still there and restrictions getting changed all the time. You can find out more about Lockdown Lowdown and our work on this on our website. As well as this, over the past year, we as MSIPs have been working on our newest manifesto, which will be the basis of our national policy for the next 5 years. We will also be creating a report that will be taken to the Scottish Government and decision makers to show what young people need and want to have change. So this year is going to be a very busy year for SIP. I would like to encourage you all to follow us on Twitter at official SIP and visit our website www.sip.org.uk to find out more about our work.
The pandemic has completely impacted on all of our lives, and our ceremonies are no different. We're now joined by two Humanist Society Scotland celebrants, Lara and Carol, and they're going to tell us about working during lockdown, wee weddings, and what they've learned during this pandemic.
I think funerals, a bit like special birthdays and graduation ceremonies, they're really big milestones in people's journey through life. And I think particularly during this pandemic, the funerals have been really, really important to people. But I know they've also been really different because of some of the restrictions that have been in place. And I wondered how you found that as a celebrant working with families.
It's very different, for sure. Particularly from the get-go, you get the call from funeral director or even directly from the family, and you cannot then just turn up at their home. And I think that's quite an important part of it for them. It's almost quite cathartic that they're able to sit down. They're a little apprehensive when you come in, but you're able to sit down and properly put them at ease. We have a cup of tea, we chat, the good stuff, the warm stuff, and we can't do that now. So I've been working using kind of generic questions initially, and I'll phone them and say, look, apologies that it is quite generic. Just fill in what you can in terms of facts and figures. I will handwrite out a kind of template of who's who in the family. But then we'll arrange a call or a video call, preferably, sort of, in a week's time, if I've got, depending how much time we have, to properly get into the details and the good stuff. So it's been an adjustment, certainly, and I'm quite used to it now, but it did take a little while to get to grips with it. What about you?
I think it's been a learning curve for everyone, myself included, and also the families that we're working with. I know that one family that I worked with, I think it was the first time that the grandmother had used Zoom. And she was very quiet for the first 10 or 15 minutes, and she let all the other family members tell their stories. And then I think she warmed to it. And then obviously she had to disagree with one of the grandchildren's versions of the story, and that's when she chipped in. And once she started, there was absolutely no stopping her in terms of telling all these stories and having all these wonderful memories as well. And the other thing that I noticed about doing it online was that we're now able to involve more family members or close friends that maybe wouldn't have been practical at a family visit at their home, because other family members might be in different countries, or they might have other commitments, so they wouldn't be able to speed across town after working time. So I've actually had more people to speak to when I've been doing it online. I'm not sure if that's been the same experience for you.
That's really interesting because, well, I don't know whether it's the area that I'm working in or the funeral directors that I work regularly with, but a lot of their clients, customers, whatever you want to call them, our families are not very computer savvy. In fact, they're not very tech literate in any way or shape or form. I've had in the past where they've actually just written on a piece of paper and taken a photograph of it and sent it on a text, and I think, right. And it's challenging, but I've managed it. So I thought, this is going to be really hard for them when it comes to operating video. So often it's not on a video call for me. I'd like it to be, and I try to encourage that, but it doesn't always pan out that way. And I can feel their apprehension on the end of the phone where they sort of say, well, what about this, and will you say that? And often a younger family member will step in and help with the technology in terms of answering email questions and etc. And then once the first draft is sent, they all relax into it a bit. They can see that it's what they wanted and how they wanted it. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially if they don't do a video call. I don't know on the day when I turn up who's who. It's like, for me, luckily with so few people, I can sort of work out who must be who, but it's so strange.
I think also all the masks are very strange as well. I know that the first burial that I did during just after lockdown, and everyone was wearing masks. And even although I'd had a video call, I still couldn't recognise the individuals because of their masks.
Yep, it's definitely, I do more cremations than burials, but it's so hard to not go up and put your arms around them. That took a lot of getting used to. However, I have had some people say, you're not worried about going into a crematorium. I think actually it's far cleaner than any supermarket I'd ever walk into. Sometimes when I put my book down on the lectern, it's still wet from having been cleaned down. So I think, no, that really doesn't concern me. People that are so careful and safe. It's just that kind of distance now that we have to keep that's quite sad.
It is. I think it's hard for all of us, isn't it? Because you have to go against your natural instinct to go and give someone a hug or shake hands with them.
Well, I think when it initially started, people were so shocked that they had so few people there. They couldn't get their kind of nearest and dearest, all of them that they wanted, and it was really upsetting. Now, as time goes on, they're becoming more used to it, and in a way, perhaps live streaming or the fact that we actually print our ceremonies off and give them a copy or give them a digital copy they can share with other people that couldn't be there is quite a bonus, I think.
Yeah, I think that Humanist Society Scotland celebrants are very good at that, aren't they? We do give the family either a hard copy or now more likely a digital copy, but it's something that they can hang on to, isn't it? It's something that they can share beyond the people that were there on the day, which I think is also very important.
Actually, at the moment, I'm writing a living funeral. I've got two. People who really know that their time is coming to an end and very much want to be a part of what is said and how it's said and done. And I think their fear under these current circumstances are that it'll be very clipped and short and impersonal. And that's been lovely, to spend time on emails, videos, and getting to know someone what a privilege to know that you're actually writing what they want, and it's absolutely their choice of music and their funny stories, and there'll probably be a few raised eyebrows, but they love the thought of that. And I think that's great.
Yeah, what a wonderful thing to be part of.
Have you ever written a living funeral?
I haven't, no.
Gosh, well, let's see. I've done 3, I think. So let's wait and see.
I wonder if we'll see more demand for that type of ceremony. I have done advanced wishes for people, and I think that's also very reassuring to them, because as you've explained, it means that they've got more input into the ceremony and the stories that are told, but very much with the instruction that this is to be used after they've died.
Hard thing to face, hard thing for the family to watch, but in a way much easier for them when the time comes, because the family don't have to worry about it being correct or being what they would have wanted.
It's a hugely considerate thing to do, actually, to think that far ahead and to think about removing the burden on the family from making all of those decisions, or having to rack their brains in the moment of that deep grief as well. But also very nice in that one of them, she specifically asked me to meet the family and let them read what we'd written together, and also to input their own stories in addition to that. So it did change, it evolved, the script.
I'm sure they all will evolve when the time comes, but the bones of it are there, shall we say, and that's it is a privilege, and people are kind of, oh, how can anyone do that? But I think if we could all just be a bit more brave and honest and open when we know that there's the inevitability is there, it would be amazing. I've actually, when I first became a celebrant with Humanist Society Scotland, of course, the training, they give you sort of list of questions, or rough questions that you should ask on a family visit. And often I have friends who've said, can I have a copy of these questions from my parents who are still alive, because I know what's going to happen. I don't know this stuff, and I never ask them, and there's a way of finding out without feeling I'm sitting them down and interrogating them. But I think that's great. I've shared that list with quite a few people, and they've been so grateful for it, thinking, could be a long time before anything happens, but at least I got those questions in about where did you go to school, what kind of person were you naughty, were you funny, did you hate school, did you love it, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think it's something we should all have access to or think about. Could you honestly answer where your parents went to school and what kind of people they were if they're in their 80s now?
It's a really valuable exercise, and that reminiscence work is really therapeutic and fascinating as well, isn't it? So it's lovely to sit down and do that with your family.
I don't know what your diary looks like for 2020, 2021. Mine is like Spaghetti Junction because I'm a paper girl. I also have a digital one, but I love a paper diary. And the weddings have just been decimated with reschedule, reschedule, reschedule. How have you found it?
Yeah, my spreadsheet was probably the equivalent of that, I think. And I would say that the majority of my couples all postponed because they had their hearts set on the big wedding, and they realised they weren't going to be able to do that. So a lot of them did postpone. But some of them did go small. And I think that was really nice as well. They had to uninvite guests from the big wedding in the big hotel, and then have a really nice, personal, meaningful ceremony with a small, select group of family in their back garden. And those wee weddings are really, really beautiful. They're pared back, but they're all about the couple and celebrating their love. And I think it's wonderful also to see that other couples are now using this as an opportunity, I think, to really embrace having a wee wedding and focusing on what's important.
I actually think it's been a bit of a revelation for couples who have, like you say, they've rescheduled till next year, maybe early next year. Now they're realising, no, it's going to be a long time before you can have 100+ people anywhere. So, they push back, and then suddenly they remember why they're doing it. And actually, this is just about getting married, or perhaps they have a terminally ill parent or very elderly guests that they would love to have be part of it. And actually, the whole point is who's there, not the party, not the drinks, the party. That can all happen way down the line. It doesn't matter. So those, I'm now seeing a sudden flurry of weddings all rushing in before the end of the year. I'm thinking, what? And that's great because they're suddenly thinking this is the most important thing is we get married, and let's not worry about the rest of the stuff, that can all be sorted later on. And when they do the small weddings, without fail, they've all said, I'm so glad we did it this way. The pressure was off, the nerves were cut back, it was so much more relaxed. They weren't worrying about seating and feeding 100 people. They weren't worried about this cake on a swing. Yes, I've had a cake on a swing. You know, all the other stuff that comes with weddings, which is lovely if that's what you're into. But actually, secretly, I think I'm now preferring the wee weddings and the you know, kind of intimacy of that and the importance of that. And it's also taken the pressure off a lot, saying, oh God, all these people we thought we'd have to invite and he didn't want to and I did and or she didn't want to. And suddenly they're going, oh, sorry, can't have you. So yeah, I've found it quite an epiphany. That's the word I can use. I've found it really eye-opening and brings it all back down to reality. It's lovely.
And you're right, the new bookings are wee weddings from the outset, aren't they? And more people choosing to elope as well, I've noticed as well. And there's some really lovely creative things people are doing with their vows and their symbolic gestures as well. I know there was this restriction where we weren't allowed to include food and drink in the ceremony. So I had one couple where they had a quaich that had been gifted by the father of the groom, engraved with a bottle of whiskey. And they both held the quaich during their ceremony and we talked about it. And the photographer captured a wonderful picture of the couple with their reflection in the base of the silver quaich as well. And they were going to share a drink from it after the ceremony. So that was lovely. And hand fasting, a revelation to me as well, because I've always done the hand fasting or I've invited family members to come up and be involved in it. And of course, none of that was possible under the restrictions, unless the family member happened to be from the same household. So I learned a new hand fasting that the couple could do themselves. And it was great just to see the couple do it independently.
It was your heart in your mouth. Was your heart in your mouth thing?
So far it's not failed.
I'm going to ask you for some tips afterwards then on how to do that, because that scares the life out of me. So you've been an HSS celebrant much longer than me. However, when I started, my plan originally was weddings. I wasn't thinking about funerals or baby namings or any of these things. I met someone on holiday who was working as a celebrant abroad. I thought, what a lovely thing to do. I looked into it and of course realised at that time the training was funerals first, weddings or naming second, weddings third. So I did all of them thinking, well, if I'm going to do this job, let's do the whole thing. However, what I didn't really ever see was what was behind all of that and the support that I would have from my fellow celebrants. It's essentially quite an individual job, but the huge wealth of knowledge, experience, humour, tips and advice have just blown me away. These guys are great.
You're right, it can be a very solitary job, and that's why actually the celebrant community is so important, because you've got that community there if you need to offload about something. You've also got that knowledge and expertise. You know, if you need a poem that would be suitable for someone that was a great walker or a great fisherman or that loved science and engineering, you can always tap into that bank of knowledge, and undoubtedly you will get some fantastic suggestions.
I mean, I've always joke and say, if I needed a poem about a one-legged sailor that loved ABBA, someone will have it, absolutely. And coming from a job that I had before, which was very focused on appearance, age, and experience was pretty far down the line, I have just loved doing this job because I totally bow to experience, and that is so important. And I think it doesn't matter whether I've got the right dress on or whether I've 2 pounds heavier than I was last week, or that doesn't matter. None of that matters. What matters is, can I do it? Can I deliver a service that's right for the family, right for the couple? And I'm so delighted to really kind of see that it's kind of restored my faith in humanity a bit, because these more experienced celebrants, I could not have done it without them. Absolutely not.
And we know that our colleagues have got our back as well in case of an emergency. And the Humanist Society Scotland promise is just worth so much, I think, both for the families and couples that we work with, but also for ourselves. And I know that only on one occasion, fortunately, that I had to call that in and get another celebrant to step in for me. And that meant so much to me. and was so important to the wedding couple that it affected as well.
Do you think you've learned anything from lockdown about you as a person or you as a celebrant?
I think there's just really that importance of reaching out to your friends and family. It's even more important now. And I feel it really for my parents, because they're quite elderly and they would be in a shielding category as well, and how isolating it is for them. Even although they're only a mile from my house, I still can't go in and spend time with them. So I've been doing lots of walks, more walking than I've ever done. And during lockdown, we made a point of taking advantage of our daily exercise. I've done more exercise than I've ever done before.
Have you got a dog?
I don't have a dog, but I have a child, which is almost as good.
So we've got 2 dogs who have been walked to within an inch of their lives. My main concern was when we came out of lockdown what they were going to do, because there weren't going to be this wealth of people around them constantly wanting to take them out. But I think more important than anything has been family and having them around. I don't have any parents, nor does my husband, and in some ways I was quite grateful for that at this stage, because I feel they would never have understood this. They passed away a long time ago, as did my husband's. But watching friends go through worrying about either care home visiting or, just getting to see them or making sure they were okay it must have been awful. Nor did I have to homeschool, which I think you did. So with my children all being that bit older, it was a busy house, but I really enjoyed spending that time with them. That I wasn't expecting to be spending with them, because they're older now. However, more than anything, I think it's taught you need to get out in fresh air. You're absolutely right, and put some structure in your day, because it can just disappear having done absolutely nothing. All these little jobs that I was wanting to do for a long time, everything's fixed. Everything's painted. I can't think of anything else to do. I started making hand fasting ties and I contacted all my wedding couples for miles ahead to say, well, if you're sitting at home and you're not a key worker, why don't you crack on with your homework and tell me your story, write that down now. Don't wait till when things are all busy up again and then you can't. So you got no excuse. So I went a bit schoolmarmy on them, but it worked.
One of the nice things has been with people spending more time at home and spending more time cooking and baking and reading books, all of those things that we think we should be doing. We've had more opportunity to do them, which is something that I've really, really loved and appreciated. Also enjoyed meeting with friends online as well, which was a bit awkward at the beginning, but I think it's become a lot more natural now and the conversations do flow.
That was weird, wasn't it? When you saw your friends on screen, you got so excited, thinking, oh, and I think that's ridiculous. She's only down the road now, but she's on the screen and I'm so excited to see her. And we've learned not to talk over each other now. But still not the same as seeing someone in person, but we'll get there, I'm sure. The other really good thing that came out of lockdown, I think, was kindness and neighbours. I've lived in the same street for over 20 years and I know some of them, but I didn't know all of them. And the clap on a Thursday night, we all came out and we used the wheelie bins because they were collected the next morning to put a glass of wine onto. And we chatted and we stayed out there for about an hour every week. And we all started to look forward to it. I was doing shopping for elderly neighbours, and I think they all kind of really enjoyed that community spirit that had not been there before. So I think that was a good thing. What were your neighbours like?
I agree. We really enjoyed our Thursday evenings and people got quite into it, banging pots and bringing out glasses of wine. I think it depends what neighbourhood you live in as well. I do feel quite fortunate where I live. I think it can be a lot tougher for some people, and I do have friends stuck in really small flats with lots of small children trying to work from home, and I'm always in awe at what they manage amongst the chaos.
It doesn't bear thinking about.
We're now joined by Jake Stevenson, who's a former member of the Scottish Youth Parliament, and he's the brainchild of our new initiative, which is called Young Humanist Scotland. And we're going to talk to Jake about his hopes for the future of humanism and also how people can get involved in Young Humanist Scotland and build it to a new audience.
I approached Humanist Society Scotland mainly because firstly, I always felt that young people, especially in sort of modern sort of philosophical or political sections, are always under sort of represented. And I felt, especially in my time as a member of the Youth Parliament, that the idea of a humanist in the Youth Parliament was kind of always sort of not hushed away, but always kept as a sort of, wasn't a big thing. Especially with a lot of different conversations going on, ultimately there was a lot of motions that would be seen as important or philosophical, and I felt that a humanist touch to things would be more than fair in an atmosphere that's widely philosophical or political. I've always never been religious in thinking. I grew up in a very religious family. My gran was a Baptist Christian, and one of the first things I was gifted by her was a child's Bible, but just never really took to the whole Bible stories. I always thought there was something else out there. There could be a different way of thinking. At a very early age I found humanism, and I've always just stuck to that sort of way of identifying myself, because it's always been which way I feel more comfortable and I like the ideas. In humanism, I always identify with the core sort of principles of being kind, of morality without the idea of it being gifted by a higher power, and the idea of accepting and respecting people's liberties. Definitely think the newer generations as it goes on, are becoming less and less sort of tied to religion. So I feel that there's a lot of young people that would just would never give it a second thought and identify as an atheist, when at heart they would read sort of what humanism is, or see a post from Humanist Society and think, wow, I agree with that, or this is exactly what I'm thinking. And then I think that through that, I think a lot of young people would finally accept that title and say, yes, this is what I am, I'm more than comfortable with it now, I now know what this is, and would call themselves humanists. I'd say that atheism and humanism are sort of hand in hand. However, I feel that humanists take a more strong approach to the whole idea of civil liberties, morality, being kind, and saying, this is what I can do, this is from me as a person, rather than a sort of a religious perspective of being from a higher deity. A lot of young people, I feel, especially these days, myself included, are a lot more active now because they see that there's a lot of things going on in the current times, whether it be political or philosophical. A lot of people, especially young people, are now realising, whoa, I actually can have a difference here. I can properly make a difference if I just put my head down and get people interested or get people together. And I feel that with a sort of Humanist Youth Scotland movement, we could bring together young people that are like-minded, or educate people that are not in the know of this, and definitely make a change to things that really, really have a sort of say to young people, or that could be young people think they could have a huge difference to. I feel that a lot of young people are a lot more open to different ideas and a lot of different agendas, and I think that sort of collection of different ideas would be something that would be very interesting to see come together with young humanists in Scotland, because a lot of young people nowadays are very in the sort of progressive way of thinking of the old ways are there. They're not set in stone though. They can make a huge difference. I feel like a lot of young people across Scotland do feel like campaigns such as legalising assisted dying or bringing an end to compulsory worship in school are more than reasonable and more than achievable goals. And I feel that young people banding together in a group such as Young Humanist Scotland could be the sort of the flagship that brings across that change for the betterment. Ultimately, the end goal would be to have elected 2 MSYPs for Humanist Youth Scotland to take forward what the young people of Humanist Youth Scotland want, and to be the two representatives for young humanists across Scotland, because I feel that, especially from my time in the Youth Parliament, sort of humanist voice is always the voice in the corner that's shouting loud but always drowned out by either the people that wouldn't call themselves humanists or by the religious follower groups. Ultimately, from off the top of my head, there are 4 religious follower groups, and unfortunately none that would classify themselves as being directly humanist in thinking. They're humanist MSYPs, of course, but again, there's no that sense of communityship or togetherness. It's more of a one person will say one thing at this point and then the other person will say another thing at the other point. There's no togetherness. The work I'd like to achieve with Young Humanist Scotland would be to bring a sense of togetherness for young people to learn about humanism, learn about our values, our core principles, to become part of a group that says that here's what we want to achieve, here's what we can achieve, and it's not through big sort of overly done ideas or through massive amounts of babying. It's about saying, here's what we want, here's what you can do to bring this together, and we depend on your support of young humanists across Scotland to achieve it. I think if you're interested in sort of this massive, what I hope will become a massive thing, then you definitely should look onto the social medias. You should look onto the Facebooks, the Twitter pages, the Humanist Society Scotland website. Even basic things like go search up what humanism is. If you have the money, buy the little book of humanism. Just read up on what humanism is, because I do feel that there's tons of people out there that would not directly call themselves a humanist but hold those core values and principles. Humanism for me, I'd say, is the philosophical belief that we can have morality, we can have a better world, we can have kindness, we can have caring attitudes towards everyone without the existence of a god or without religious intervention. I hope to achieve a strong and steady future for humanist ideals and humanist ideologies in Scotland, and I hope to achieve a good sort of group of people that want to see change in Scotland for the betterment of young people and for the better of humanists across the entire country.
Next up is a premiere of our new animation which explains what humanism is. We've developed this collaboratively with young people right across Scotland, and we're really excited to share it with you today. We want you to share it widely and to help build our Young Humanist Scotland movement to make it capable of making change in the 21st century.
What do Stephen Fry, Ricky Gervais, Margaret Atwood, Albert Einstein, Sarah Pascoe and Philip Pullman have in common? They're all humanists. But what exactly is a humanist? Well, in a nutshell, humanists think that every human should be given the freedom and opportunity to live their life to the fullest, whilst respecting and protecting the rights of everyone else and the planet. Humanists are non-religious. They don't believe in gods or an afterlife. Humanists are secular. They don't think that religion and things like politics or education should mix. Humanists are rational. They understand the world through science and rational argument. Humanists are socially responsible. They believe that we all have a social responsibility to each other and the planet. Humanism is an approach to life that's always existed. Nobody invented humanism. It doesn't have a founder or a central figure. It doesn't have a set of prescribed rules or beliefs. It's a movement, not a creed. Humanism is about creating a world that fosters the fullest possible development for every human being. So why do so many people gather together under the banner of humanism? Many voices together achieve more. And humanist groups have led and supported many different campaigns over the years, winning victories and making changes for the better in Scotland and across the globe. By supporting humanist organisations, we can make changes locally, nationally and globally. So, find out how you can get involved. Humanism. A better tomorrow starts in your hands today. Visit www.humanism.scot to find out more.
Building on our earlier discussion on environmentalism, we're now joined from Cardiff by Professor of Philosophy Robin Attfield, who's going to discuss about the interaction between environmentalism and humanism and how we can all be involved.
My name is Robin Attfield, and I am an Emeritus Professor of Philosophy at Cardiff University. Thank you for inviting me, and congratulations to the Humanist International on the Reykjavik Declaration on the Climate Change Crisis, with its endorsement of, quote, the need for a global transition to new ways of using resources and new means of generating energy that will be socially and environmentally sustainable, and with its call on governments and regional authorities for, quote, urgent action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and make land use and resource extraction sustainable, and to protect and conserve wild habitats, together with its support for, quote, urgent and long-term policy making to mitigate and prevent climate change. That's the Reykjavik Declaration of 2019. My title today is Ethical Dilemmas Arising from Climate Change. The contemporary world and everyone alive in it today are faced with a climate emergency, with aerial pollution and maritime pollution often threatening human health, and severe losses to wildlife and biodiversity, and with climate change generating flooding of coasts, islands and river valleys, and also unprecedented storms, droughts and wildfires of increasing frequency and intensity. The ethical reasons for taking action include human well-being present and future, and also the well-being of members of other species, including those threatened with extinction, and the preservation of their habitats and ecosystems. But even if this much is agreed, many choices remain to be made about policies and priorities, and bring dilemmas with them. Now to some climate-related dilemmas. The scale and urgency of the problems involve us in difficult choices and dilemmas. First, in terms of targets, the stronger target of the Paris Agreement of 2015 of limiting increases of average temperature to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels means that the all-time budget for carbon emissions reduces from 1 trillion tonnes, the limit for a ceiling of 2 degrees, to 750 billion, or 750 billion tonnes. I base these figures incidentally on a paper of Meinhausen and others in the journal Nature of 2009. Since we, that is humanity, have emitted well over half of these amounts already, we need plans to become carbon neutral as soon as possible, and measures to be adopted without delay to make such plans feasible. The official British government plan to phase out the sale of petrol cars and hybrid cars by 2035 is promising, but may be too late, and the amended suggestion from a minister to do this by 2032 is more promising. But these plans presuppose the prior installation of a comprehensive national system of electric charging points and an energy system sourced from renewable and nuclear sources. Much more concerted and government-based action is needed if these presuppositions are to be made into realities. One further dilemma concerns whether nuclear sources of energy should be included. Here my view is that since the waste products cannot be safely stored and plants cannot be safely decommissioned, they should not be included. But some people claim that the alternatives are at least as bad. What all this contributes to is the date by which the United Kingdom should become carbon neutral. The government plan is to do this by 2050. But that date is later than the date given by Meinhausen, by which humanity will have used up its carbon budget for attaining even the 2-degree limit, which is 2044. Thus, the option of 2050 is likely to set the wrong example for the Glasgow Conference of the Parties, now delayed to November 2021, where national commitments need to be ratcheted up and where the hosts need to set an example. So a much earlier date should be possible, if possible, be set, a date by which oil and gas boilers will have been replaced by electric ones, as well as cars becoming electric fueled, and if possible, aeroplanes as well. We should now turn to the efforts of other countries to mitigate their emissions and to adapt to the increased levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that are by now unavoidable. Many third world countries are not going to achieve what is needed without technological and financial assistance. So it should, I suggest, be national policy to assist these transitions, both financially and with technology transfer. There are precedents for this. When it was discovered in the 1980s that ozone-depleting chemicals were exposing millions of people to skin cancer through solar radiation, both China and India were induced to set aside plans to manufacture CFCs, that is chlorofluorocarbons, and HCFCs, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, the main ozone-depleting chemicals, through technology transfer and financial support from Western countries. Ozone levels are now set to recover over a 60-year period, and so this operation was overall a success. This is just the kind of project that is now needed to assist third world countries with carbon mitigation and adaptation. Other options are for the UK to focus on its own problems and leave all this to others, or to focus on former colonies and not on the remaining countries. But the risk, if so, is that the world will outstrip its carbon budget, and everyone and all creatures will suffer increasingly in consequence. It should be added that at least in some cases these countries are owed compensation for being subjected to climate change despite having contributed very little to its generation. This is an ethical reason, additional to self-interest and benevolence, for taking up this challenge. Besides the dilemma about whether to make available such assistance, there are also dilemmas about the form that it should take. Many third world countries need further economic development in order to satisfy the needs of their resident populations. But much development assistance is of contestable quality, with, for example, large dams being introduced which tend to silt up within 3 decades, and similar misguided schemes. In the matter of climate mitigation and adaptation, assistance with renewable energy generation is likely to be one important kind of contribution, whether in the form of hydroelectric schemes, wind power, tidal energy, or solar energy. But even this kind of assistance needs to form part of an integrated development plan, including provision of schools and hospitals, with a strong emphasis on boosting female education, one of the key factors of development and also contributory to the reduction of family size and to the stabilising of population. For it is important to remember that climate change is not the only problem, and that policies to respond to it need to be integrated with those required to solve other ongoing problems such as poverty, malnutrition and population increase. There is also a need for collaboration between donor countries in consultation with recipient countries to ensure that no countries are left without assistance and without appropriate assistance. That would both be unjust and discriminatory and disadvantageous to everyone in view of the runaway emissions likely to ensue. To recap, the dilemmas that I have been discussing concern the date by which the UK should become carbon neutral and the policy commitments that should be offered to facilitate the ratcheting up of national commitments at the Conference of the Parties to be held in Glasgow in November 2021. There is a related dilemma about whether nuclear energy should be included in the mix of energy sources alongside renewables. There is also the possible decision to assist third world countries towards climate change mitigation and adaptation with financial and technology transfers. Then there are policy decisions about the form that such assistance should take and about collaboration between donor and recipient countries. These dilemmas I perforce hand over to you because I'm afraid my time is up.
We're now joined by Glasgow poet, filmmaker and writer Sean, who's going to share 3 of his poems with us today. Really excited to introduce him. I think his poetry has a lot of humanist values at the heart of it. And he has also reached millions of people online with his poem Time for Love, which was also award-winning, and it inspired his own TED Talk as well. So please go out there and share his work after you've seen it today because it is really exciting. Enjoy those pieces now.
School took us to a house of prayer. Reserved mince portions at the dinner table. Marble Marys and nuns in cloth the same colour as the bricks. Priests to this country house, like police to the city we came from. I walk past them half their height and weight and can hear the keys rattle in my head. The keys to cages smaller and hotter than I can imagine, given the mountains huge and harmless around us. So you can't deny the beauty as the bell wakes us, binds us and blows us like holy Highland wind to mass. We are each handed a list of transgressions, inky accusatory black lines on white more sins than I'd ever considered. A class of repenting lambs, bah, away the beauty. And I thank God for my best friend who sighs out forced prayers with rolled eyes and says, I think I've committed every sin on here. The laugh feels like the city back. We sit and wish they'd printed on the list little boxes for us to check so he could shout, bingo. I can't stop seeing signs and resigning myself to their prophecies. A dropped pen, you're losing your talent. The wrong choice at the restaurant, pleasure is eluding you. From the sky, a fallen feather, you're finally catching your blessing. A slave to signs, finding them day and night, forgetting I was the one who dropped the pen, read the menu, and looked up at the right time. It's Glasgow, March, and we walk hand in hand in the park. Now it's 3:13 and I'm late and I have to make a choice. We're both boys, you see. If you were to go back and look, you'd see 100 eyes hurry to objectify this hand-in-hand stance. It's a flurried dance of reactions. Some smile, they're proud and they want me to know. But there's a darker shade of brow that balances the books. The kind of look that challenges, like this is some chess game and I'm in check and I'm second guessing what they might do next. Point me out to all the pawns in the crowd, spawn a following whose glowers linger on so that our hands are no longer holding, but dragging glare after glare, snowballing stares, stretching elastic social disgrace across this forbidden space, and the scales are well and truly tipped. Now it's 3:14, Glasgow, March 2018, and I have to make a choice. Have you ever wondered how to say goodbye, to a friend's mum? Do you go in for a kiss in the cheek? To a colleague, neighbour, do you hug them or shrug them off? What if that neighbour is your lover? What if there's no other way to say goodbye than the one you know will send outcry burning through the walk-in matchstick men and women who love to strike up ideals? I'm a walking meal for the mouths of normality. And what does that mean exactly? We're normal, he says with his frown, but under his wife's dress and flesh is an unborn baby, blessed with one more hour of air before she miscarries, and they carry that grief with them to the grave, and they are not normal anymore. They are changed and aching. And that old man, I make him sick, but he writes to Japan at the weekend to get a friend to send the used knickers you can vend from a machine there for completely normal purposes, of course. See, normality is a crowd-sourced fantasy, but it turns every single silent person in this park into an enemy. Teenage boys blunder ahead. How much thunder are they carrying in their heads? They should probably be at school, drawing straight lines, sprinting in straight lines, thinking in straight lines, and when the bell rings, it's no wonder they want to straighten out anything that curves or bends. In her, with the rolling chips and the kids, she'd take one salty glance at two guys kiss and be hissing vinegar our way. I've got nothing against gays, she'd say, but do you have to do it in front of my kids? And she runs away. They never do stay long enough to look you in the eyes. In a Bible basher rehashing lies about Jesus, like how Poundland rip off mini cheddars and sell them on as cheese savouries, because it seems to me like Jesus saved a lot of time when he died for all our crimes that he would have wasted, teaching small minds that love is no sin. See him, he thinks it's faith, but under all that din it tastes like cardboard and it smells like hate. And I may sound angry, but I'm just scared. Because in the midst of this and this and that, there's one person I'm not looking at. Because our face looks different in the daylight than in the night. Or at least there's no one staring, but you're always wearing worry lines and looking at the time because the last train home is always waiting. Because this should be a small choice and there's all this noise in my head. I should be holding a hand and I'm holding shame instead. But I'm letting go. No, I won't keep weighing it up. I'll put my muscles at ease. And they're 30% of my mass, by the way. I'm a homo sapien. Elbows, knees, 60% water flooding, 7% blood rushing, and 0.5% beating heart. So why is a goodbye kiss no walk in the park? 0.5% doesn't sound like much, but it's enough. It's 3:15, Glasgow, March 2018, after all. You'd think it was just about time for love.
Thank you for joining us today for our first ever online conference. I hope you've enjoyed watching the content as much as we have enjoyed making it. Thank you, of course, to all of our speakers who took part today. And I also just want to take this as a quick opportunity to thank all of our staff, our volunteers, our trustees, and of course you as our members for keeping this organisation going at such a tough time. Please comment below on what you've thought of today's conference and all of the speakers, and also share the video widely so that more people can be reached with some good humanist content.